Cool.
Here you go.
All right, man, we got a great lineup tonight. We got a bunch of people on. I'm excited about tonight's call. So tonight we get to continue with our biggest mistakes. Is that the right term? Biggest mistakes? Okay.
Worst mistakes, worst.
The worst mistakes. All right, the worst mistakes. All right, so we're going to go over the worst mistakes that you can make in this business. Yeah. And some of these can just be absolutely catastrophic. Okay. And what we want to do is make sure that you don't make these catastrophic mistakes. So we're going to talk through them. We're going to save a few minutes at the end to get into some Q&A and just talk MHP stuff and, you know, all that fun stuff. But for now, let's talk about topic or mistake number 3. Okay. Now, mistake number 3 is not adjusting your revenue projections when buying with large delinquencies. So who in here has underwritten a mobile home park or bought one? Who's analyzed a mobile home park before on this call? Everybody's hand should be up unless this is your first call. Okay. So how many times have you asked a seller for a rent roll and they say, hey, it's 40 spaces or it's 50 spaces or it's 20 spaces, and all you see is 20 names, lots 1 through 20, and it says $300 per lot next to every one? Who's seen that before? Okay. Looks great. You're like, sweet, man, they've collected all the rent, right? Doesn't mention how long they've been there, doesn't mention any delinquency balances, you know, just this is what we charge, right? So you see that on a lot of deals. And even when brokers send that stuff out, it's like, all right, so what's really going on in this park? Well, there's a few things that you need to ask for in order to make sure that you're covering all your bases. Because rarely, let me repeat that, rarely do you have every single tenant paying every single month on time, okay? It's just rare, okay? So we need to get the rent roll. We need the profit and loss, okay? And ideally, we want a trailing 12-month and a year-end P&L. You can get multiple years in due diligence, but early on, if you can get that profit and loss and you can get your rent roll, and then also you want current delinquency balances. It's funny because every time I go under due diligence on a deal, it's like I have to explain that to them. Like they don't know what I mean by how much do your tenants owe you in back rent? And then, so you have to ask for that specifically. And you want to know total balances, not just who owes for this month still. Okay, there's a big difference because you might have a tenant that's 6 months behind that they haven't even started the eviction on, or you might have somebody that's just, you know, a couple weeks late. And there's a difference. So you want to know those total balances. You can quickly look and see who's got to go as soon as you take over. Okay, let's do some quick math. Somebody grab a calculator. Anybody grab a calculator. Raise your hand if you got a calculator for me. All right, thank you, Steve. I'm gonna call you Steve, and Stephen G is Stephen, okay? Steve, calculate this for me. It's a tough one. 300 times 10, okay, so that's 300 a month lot rent times 10 tenants not paying rent for the month. What's that give you? 3,000, right? Okay, times 12 equals 36,000, right? Okay. So you can take 10 people each month not paying rent, which on a good sized park might not make, you know, it might be a little bit under the radar. Maybe it is call it 40, 50 space park. And at different times, 10 people are not paying, because it's $36,000 a year you lose if you have those people not paying. Okay. So let's measure the devastation that can happen. If you buy a 40 space park, 40 homes sitting on lots, everything looks pretty. The owner sends you that beautiful rent roll, 300, all 40 lots, say 300 right next to it. And you don't check and you don't look into who's actually paying the rent, what the balances are. You could potentially be buying something that's going to start, when you take over, you're already on track to lose $36,000 a year from budget. okay, from your pro forma. So let's talk about how you handle this. Okay, number one, we want to figure out what's wrong or who's not paying, okay, by getting those back balances. And then from there, you want to create your pro forma, your budget, your let's call it pro forma for the sake of your projections, okay? And what you want to do is you want to pro forma out your evictions, your renovation and title times, and your sale times, okay? So if you've got 10 people out of 40 not paying, you want to go in with the expectation that none of them are going to pay. As soon as you take over, chances are you're not going to get those people caught up. The previous owner couldn't, you're not Superman, you probably can't either, okay? And that's the way you need to look at it. Go in with the expectation that nobody's going to pay. You got to get rid of every single one of them, and they all need work, okay? So what you need to do is you need to be conservative, and you need to start figuring out, okay, how long, and obviously experience helps with this, but if it's your first rodeo, you still need to figure out roughly how long is it going to take to get an eviction done in that market. You can find that out by looking it up, contacting the county. You can talk to attorneys that specialize in evictions. And if you got experience, then you can go based on historicals, but you need to time out how long those evictions take, okay? And expect for delays, okay? Then from there, you need to figure out your renovation time. How long are you going to rehab? And you're not going to rehab 10 homes at once, right? You might get 10 homes back within a 2-week period of each other. But unless you got some serious crews, you're probably not going to rehab all 10 homes at once. You're probably going to pick the one with the least amount of work first, and you're going to start working your way up to the doozies, right? So, because the sooner you rehab those homes, then you can take them to market, and you got to figure some market time. Oh, don't forget your title. Okay, you got to file for abandonment likely. So you've evicted, now you got to get the title. So now you're probably 45 days out, whatever, 60 days out potentially. And then on top of that, you got to figure out the home sale time. And if they're newer homes where there's financing involved, they're not gonna walk in and pay cash usually. So there's a finance period. So you really need to model this out. And I recommend you put this in a spreadsheet month by month. It should be like month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4 for your full year. And then just put a 1 or 2 or 3, or basically number out how many are going to be in each stage of the process. And you'll start to see them coming online as the months go on. And you can basically use that spreadsheet to model out lot rent coming back online, okay, over an extended period of time. You don't want to figure that you're going to have all 10 homes taken back, rehabbed, and sold in 3 months. It's just not going to happen, okay, unless you're really on it. So, or maybe they don't need a lot of work, or maybe it's an easy state where it's a very quick eviction process. But that's why you really got to do your homework, because you can be very, very far off. Think about this. On call it 40 space park, if you got 10 people not paying, what is that? 72, it's like roughly 145, 150 a year revenue, right? If all are paying on all 40 lots, roughly. If you do the math on that, let's play with this. Hopefully somebody can calculate a mortgage really fast for me. But let's just say you got 145,000 in revenue. Let's do 40% expense ratio. So that's 0.6 times 0.6. That gives you 87,000 remaining. Now you need to take out your mortgage. And that's the tough one to calculate. But let's just say that your mortgage is, help me out with this. I should have modeled this out before I got on here.
I got a calculator ready for you. I got Carl's mortgage calculator. Give me numbers.
All right. So you got an NOI of roughly 87,000. Let's say it's an 800. Let's just make the numbers easy and say it's a $1 million property. Okay. So then in that case, you've got $700,000 mortgage. Okay. At 4% interest, at 25-year amortization. What am I missing? Should give you gave you the interest rate, gave you the loan amount, yeah, that should give you a monthly payment times 12.
You said 25 years?
Sure. Or 20, whatever. Doesn't matter.
3694.
It's 3,600 and change. Yeah.
You got 36,000?
37.
Right.
36.
So 36,000, that leaves you with 50. Wait, what, Barry?
No, that was the monthly payment.
36,000 a month?
No, the monthly payment is $3,694.86.
So what is that
So
per
call it
year?
4,000. So call it 4,000.
Got it. So that'd be $48,000 a year, right? Okay, so I'm gonna subtract, so I got 87,000. I'm gonna subtract 48,000 from that. That leaves me with 39 grand. But wait, 10 people aren't paying. Okay, so now you subtract out, let's say half of that. Let's say it takes you 6 months to get those homes back online. Half of 36 is what, 18? So you subtract out 18,000, you're down to 21 grand. Okay, so you can see how really aggressively that can skew your numbers to where if you had a preferred rate of return you're trying to hit with your investors, or you've got some cost on your capital, you could be in the serious red zone. And that's just a random example. I mean, we just made up a mortgage amount, but 36,000 or even half of that can really throw things off. You guys see the seriousness of why we need to know who's not paying and what happens if we don't catch that. All right, so let's talk about another thing that you can do when you've got these high balances. Okay, let's say you negotiate all the terms with the seller and you get it to a price point that makes sense. You're not going to collect all that money. Okay, we already talked about that. It's not going to happen. Assume that you're not going to collect any of it. But as soon as you close on that property, what are we going to do? We're going to go to every single one of those tenants and we're going to give an opportunity to redeem themselves. Okay, because the truth is, you're not going to file eviction on a balance they don't owe you. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to go to every single tenant and you're going to negotiate. You're going to say, hey, Mr. Johnson, you owe me $5,000. I know the previous owner was a really nice guy and let you off the hook, but I'm not going to. You've got 10 days, okay, to pay me X amount of money. I'll discount how much you owe me. I'll discount it down to 4,000, or I'll discount it to 3,800, but you've got 10 days to pay me. And if you don't come up with the money, you're going to eviction on the 1st, okay? So you basically set terms where they then bring you a lump sum of money that they didn't even owe you. Okay, now you might say, well, wait a minute, they didn't owe you the money. How can you take that money? Well, here's the thing. In your contract, what you need to make sure it says is that the previous owner cannot collect on the tenants and that all current balances are transferred and now transferred over to the new owner. Okay, you know how many times I see contracts where it says that the previous owner has the right to collect those balances and all balances stay with the previous owner? Very common for that to be a term in the agreement, and you need to push back on that, because not only is it not fair, you don't want, if they couldn't collect it, get the heck out of my way, I'll go collect it, okay? Secondly, you don't want to compete with the previous owner. Think about this. They owe him $5 grand. They owe you $300. Okay, he's got a much bigger nut that he can chase after him for. You don't want him knocking on their doors too. So you want to make sure that transfers to you, and then you use that balance as an opportunity for that resident to redeem themselves at a discount. And then you say, hey, if you never miss a payment again, you're good to go. We'll pretend like that never happened, but you're going to pay me $2,500 or $3,500. Whip out your credit card. This is your one-time shot to redeem yourself. Believe it or not, people do it. They really do. And you can collect some big money up front. Even if you're discounting it in half, who cares? The chances are some of those people are going to default the next month. Start the eviction. Okay. So, but it's a great opportunity to make up for some potential lost income by collecting that money up front. Okay. So that is number 3. That was the large collection balances. I'm going to go to the next one. And then if you guys got questions about either one of these, then you can come back and ask me at the end. We'll talk Q&A and we'll kind of go through this. Okay. So number 4. So what was it? Worst mistakes. Number 4, worst mistake that you could make that would just screw you over is not performing proper due diligence on private utilities. If you want to just like play with fire, if you want to play Russian roulette and just click, click, click.
Wastewater treatment plant.
I know it's graphic, but that's how you do it in this business, okay? You just don't do the proper due diligence on the private utilities. So this can be completely catastrophic. Now, the previous one, number 3, that can hurt a lot and it can be devastating, but this can bankrupt you, okay? Is my drama level high enough for this? Okay, because I can always step it up.
Like
a notch.
Monday, yeah, no, it
Yeah.
feels about
All
right.
Making sure you guys understand how bad this is. All right, owners may mask problems before you show up. So here's the problem. When people know that they have a problem and that it's probably going to make it harder for them to sell or it's going to discount their price significantly, unfortunately, people can be dishonest. And I'd say it's about 50-50. I meet some really good sellers, okay? Really honest, good, down-to-earth people. Then I meet some shady people, okay? Like the last one I had under contract, super shady. I don't even know how to explain it. Just sketchy, okay? Like straight up liar. I'll tell you a funny story if we have time. But anyways, so they may try and hide the issues that they have because it's either them or you. And it's unfortunate that it happens that way. So you need to make sure that you're checking, number 1, before you even get to the property, you need to be checking the well and whatever type of sewer system inspection reports with the government agencies. Okay, you're going to ask the seller for copies of their reports because typically a well has a reoccurring inspection, sometimes multiple times a week, depending on the well and where it's at and what the regulations are. But you need copies of all the well inspections as far back as you can get, okay? If it's on well. If it's on private sewer systems, the testing is going to depend. Septics, you probably don't have much testing, okay? If you're on a wastewater treatment plant or you're on a lagoon or you're on something like that, you've probably got some sort of reoccurring tests that have to happen and that gets submitted to the EPA or to the state or the health department. You need to get these reports before you ever touch the ground at that property, okay? Why? Because you might figure some things out very early on, and it's better to do it before you spend all the travel time and money. So there's one other thing. You're going to ask the seller for the reports, but then you're going to go and get separate set of reports directly from the government. Okay, why would we do that? Because people lie, right? Shady people. So the reason I would get the reports from the seller is because I want to know what agencies. It might be an efficient way for me to figure out what agencies I need to hit up to get the actual reports from them. And if for some reason they're honest and they give me a report that's got some issues on it, cool. Now I know that there's issues. If it's clean bill of health, I still am going to order them directly from the government so that I get accurate information. Okay. And then from there, hire a specialized contractor / inspector to thoroughly inspect. And then, so give me an example. You're not going to go through 1 or 2 of the septics. You're going to check every one of them. Okay. If you got a wastewater treatment plant, you're not just going to go with any plumber to check that. You need a company that specializes in wastewater treatment plants. Same thing with lagoons. Okay. These guys got to know what they're talking about, and you need to be on site when they inspect them because you want to make sure that they're being thorough. And when you're talking to the inspector, you need to make sure that they sound like they know what they're talking about. Okay. If they're kind of winging stuff, you need to recognize that and get a second opinion because these, again, can be just catastrophic issues if they don't catch them. Okay. So you want a full report, and then any issues that come up, you need to get bids on that work. Okay. So you've got numbers tied to the problem and how to solve it. All right. And you're going to want to get multiple bids, not just one if there are issues. And then also find out if you can connect to public systems. And you want to get that answer again directly from the government. Okay, so, and you want to do that again before you go out and physically check it out. So if I was going to do it, first thing I would do is I'd call the city, see if I can connect. Okay, or maybe it's county or whoever's got the system. I'm gonna call them first, and then I'm getting the reports, and I'm getting duplicate reports directly from the government. Okay, I want to know that if everything hits the fan, can I connect to public utilities or not? If the answer is no, my risk level just went up quite a bit. Okay, if I can, then there's at a cost, I can correct it, right? So if my septic start failing, if my wastewater treatment explodes, or my lagoon just, well, we won't get graphic on that, but if it goes bad, you can fix it. Okay, if you can connect to public utilities. If you can't, you better hope you got a good system, or you're building a whole new one. So that's what you're going to do from an inspection standpoint. You know, I've had a property that we bought quite a while ago. That was almost a year ago, wasn't it? My partner / dad and I got on and did kind of a walkthrough on how we converted a private system community where it was on well and septics over to city water and sewer, and how that project went and how we did that. And when we bought that property, we knew there were problems, obviously. We knew that we were going to connect to the city. So it wasn't a surprise for us. And we did all our homework on that. And we had the budget up front to do the work. But one thing that I'll tell you is that projects always take longer than planned, right? There's always surprises. There's always delays. It's always a headache. Somebody says one thing up front and they change it later. The contractor goes out of business. The contractor changes his numbers, you know. Permitting office gets delayed. Who knows? It's just, there's always something that happens on these kind of projects. And so we had some delays. Let me give you what kind of math these delays can cost you. And ours was minimal. Okay. So we had failing septics that required pumping weekly. All right. And now the good thing is that we only had like 3 or 4 of them that we had to pump every week. You might say, well, that's not that bad. Out of 20 of them or 30 of them, I can't remember how many we had, but out of all of them, we only had like 3 or 4 that had to be pumped weekly. There were a few that had to be pumped monthly, but at $350 per pump, okay, times, call it 3. Let's be conservative, okay, or I should say, yeah, conservative. That's $4,200 a month in pumping poop costs. Okay, that is a big cost on a property that you're in the process of turning around. You're already dealing with all the headaches because the poop's flying out, the septics are pumping out, they're getting everywhere, tenants are pissed, people are moving out, you're evicting people, you're rehabbing homes, you're doing all this other crazy stuff, and you're pumping out call it $5,000 a month in poop pumping costs. That's crazy. Now, the funny thing is, we budgeted some pumping, but not that much. And so, that's almost $50,000 a year, could be up to $60,000 a year with only 3 or 4 septics having to be pumped weekly. That's crazy. That'll screw up your finances like real fast. Okay. So just understand that these costs can just be, again, devastating. It's all about the due diligence up front. It's all about getting professionals in place. It's all about checking and double checking, trust but verify, and get the results or get the answers directly from the source, not your seller. Okay. Make sure that if there's any licensing required for any of these private systems, that you've got copies of the licenses, because you could potentially be buying a system that works, but the health department told the property, a year ago that they had 1 year to shut down that system and connect the city, and they didn't. The seller's like, oh yeah, it works great, no problem. Yeah, someday if you want to connect to the city, you can do that, but why? It works great. And as soon as you close on the property, you got the EPA knocking on your door saying you're past due by 3 months. You got 3 months or we're shutting you down. I mean, literally, I know of a deal that I've been chasing for the last 1.5 years, and it's exactly that problem. The EPA is all over the city to make the park owner connect, and if they don't, they got real serious problems. And so I've been chasing this deal forever with the expectation that I'm going to have to connect, but it's a lagoon system. So, it's heavily, and it works. That's the crazy thing. The system works, but because the EPA doesn't like it, they're making them shut it down. Okay. Had I not known that, and I haven't bought it, of course, but that could be, it's like that's a big cost on a good sized park, 100+ space park, more than 150 spaces. So connecting that many to the city is spendy. Okay. So I think we're right on time. What kind of questions do you guys have about either one of these topics that we can answer? And first I'll throw out an answer, and then I'll give E a chance to also chime in and give some answers too. Maybe Paul Martins, you got a couple things, we'll kind of keep it organized. But what do you guys got on either one of these? Number 3 was not adjusting revenue projections when buying large delinquencies. And number 4, again, was not performing proper due diligence on private utilities. Oh, Joseph, you got a question?
Yeah, on number 3. Also, this is my first video call. So I'm
Cool,
happy.
man. Welcome. We're pumped to have you on.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Appreciate you participating and not just hiding from us.
Absolutely. Do you ever collect prorated rent? So say you're closing on like the 20th of a month, and there's tenants behind on payment, that sort of thing. Would you just, from the seller, collect maybe your 10 days of that month, technically, because
Yeah.
they're supposed to be collecting their rent anyways? Is that something you include?
So the way that you handle that, and there's a few different ways, okay? The way that I handle it is I take the previous month or 2 months collections, and I say, look, Mr. Seller, we're going to prorate the rent based on what you've collected over the last 2 months. Now, if it's like the second of the month, that's fairly easy. But when you start getting in the middle of the month and there's a lot of kind of moving parts going on, you just kind of want to nail down, you take the previous collections for the last 2 months, you can average it out and then prorate it by the number of days. That's the safest way, okay? Or you can also do it as, true collected balances. What's going to happen is the seller's going to want to say, hey, here's my rent roll. This is what everybody owes me. I want you to pay for the prorated amount on the full potential rent. That's how you get stiffed on a few $1,000s. But to answer your question, it's in the contract. You need to make sure that the rents are prorated. And the best part about it is the title company at closing is going to prorate those rents, and it's going to come out in the wash with the funding and proceeds going out to you as proceeds going out to the seller. Yep. Great question. And let me make a note on that. You can prorate other things. Okay. So there might be some other expenses like utilities and stuff that can also be prorated as well. Not just income, expenses are too, and taxes and insurance can all be, insurance, you don't really have to prorate, but taxes you would prorate as well, property tax. Great question, Joseph.
To determine actual balances of tenants and everything, we're working with a guy right now who, he doesn't know to the dollar amount. He just kind of knows like, oh, this person's 6 months behind, but doesn't have a solid dollar amount. We are asking to get most recent bank deposits to verify, is that what it's supposed to be? Is there another way we can verify when his bookkeeping is that terrible?
I always get bank statements. I mean, that's one of my due diligence items. So I want 12 to 24 months of bank statements. If I can get 36, great. But you want bank statements. What we do is we model all the deposits and all the expenses, and then we analyze it side by side with the rent roll and the P&L and the tax returns. So you got like side by side each year, you can basically compare them. What you're hoping is that there's more deposits in the bank account than there are on everything else. It's the bad part is when the bank deposits are really low and all the other numbers are really high. And then you got to play, Inspector Gadget and figure everything out. So
how do you deal with it when they've commingled it with either another bank or another business, or they've just terrible?
It's shot. Yeah. I mean, I haven't figured out a way Unless there's some sort of direct deposit that's coming in from rent manager, and then they're depositing everything else as checks, but I've never seen that. It's just, when they say, oh, this is commingled with other stuff, and they give you the bank statements and it's like 100K more a year than everything else, you're like, yeah, they're pretty much shot. E might have an idea. Oh, sorry, E, I didn't give you a chance to answer
no.
on Joseph's either.
No. I was just kind of to add to that. So no, exactly. You go and then you investigate taxes, deposits, and then next best thing, of course, you check in the leases, and then no leases and it's cash. Okay, then estoppels. And Paul Martins contributed to our discussion earlier. He dropped estoppel template in the chat, which I promptly dropped in our resource folder. Estoppels, yes, estoppels.
And estoppels are about as good as the tenant that's, signing on the line too. There's, yes, it's a legal document, but if the number's a little lower than they really owe, it's not something I would rely on. We've never actually done them, but you can.
Mario, one correction on the insurance, that can be prorated.
Okay. Yeah. We normally get a new policy. So, I mean, just assume the policy from the previous owner prorated?
They can.
Yeah, okay. We haven't ever done that. We always just get a new policy. Well, you know that.
Yeah.
So we always just get a new policy. Theirs ends, they get a credit back if possible on theirs, because they end theirs and we start ours, and it's kind of, although you're saying you could also prorate your annual policy. I see what you're saying. So you wouldn't necessarily you can prorate with the previous owner, is what you're saying too?
Yeah, in certain circumstances, you can do that.
Interesting. Okay, never done that.
Not
That's cool.
always, but you can acquire it. Just saves a little money during that, 6-7 months that you're buying it. So you have to write your own policy.
Love it. Jay, the insurance guru here. He's the guy with the answers on the insurance for sure.
Mobile
All right.
insurance.
Yep.
So,
good question.
Mario,
Yeah, go ahead,
Mario, I
Stephen.
got a quick question. With parks that have private utilities, I know there's like a fine line between charging residents for those private utilities and becoming a service provider. Would it have been an option if that park that you were spending $4,200 a month in poop costs, if you factored that into utilities for the residents, or is that too much of a slippery slope to follow?
Okay, so the right answer to this question is you need to get with an attorney on that for whatever state you're buying in, because every state's different on whether you can charge for maintenance costs of a utility system or if it's just a pass through on actual what's so funny? We got something in the chat or something that's got you cracking up, or is it still the poop pumping bill?
No, we're just gonna continue this theme.
Yeah.
Gross.
So you need to check with the government in that state to make it to an attorney to find out if you can charge for the maintenance costs. Now, I will say in Florida, double check on yours, but we did it. Okay, we did not charge the poop pumping cost, but we did charge the well testing, and there's something else that we were billing back. Because what happened is our timelines got pushed back a little bit. We're like, shoot, we can bill this back. We'd already given notice that we were going to start collecting utility bill back. And then it got delayed by a couple months. So what we started doing is we started charging back costs, because in Florida, you could charge 12 months back. So what we did is we took the total amount of well testing, and there was some other stuff that were maintenance related, and we were able to take that, and then we were able to prorate it and bill it so we could collect something. So good question. I'd just be very, very cautious. Just because an owner tells you that they're billing back their well costs or their septics or their wastewater treatment or lagoon costs, that's always like a major red flag to me. Like, as soon as they say that they're billing the tenant for their private utilities, I'm like, oh, that might be a big problem. So get with an attorney on that. I don't know if I answered your question, and maybe E's got some follow-up on that, or Martin's, if you want to chime in. We got about 8 minutes left.
Okay, I'll say that if you look at the estoppel certificate, this is probably our third or fourth one we've drawn up. It was one of the last properties we did. It was very, the seller was very difficult. You know, he made a lot of claims that made us question a lot of what he was doing. And what that estoppel certificate does is it forces the tenant to say, what am I paying right now? What have I given the landlord in terms of a security deposit? Every question, if you look through that thing, and you can modify it to fit your situation, but so I'm getting it directly from the resident, what they're saying. And then when I go back before I'm closing with the seller, I'm like, look, you've got $5,000 in security deposits that you've already collected that are going to get applied towards this, you know, when I go to purchase the house or purchase the park. And that way you don't have tenants coming to you after the fact saying, hey, I've already given this guy a $500 deposit. So it helps save you because they've signed off that this is what they've said they've done. And then you go back to the seller and you figure out the purchase price at the end.
Yep, that's a
Yeah.
great, that is a
The
really.
second item that Mario talked about, you made a lot of really good points here. And especially in smaller markets, but even in bigger markets, you know, when you've got people cleaning out your septic tanks, you're probably going to have only about a half dozen suppliers or contractors in the area. And what I've done is I just called them all and I said, you know, before, without even letting the owner know, and I said, are you servicing this park until I find the one that's servicing it? And then I ask them, what do you think the life is on these septic tanks? You know, how good are they? How often do you have to go out? And it's a really good way of checking with what the owner's saying, with what the service provider is saying, without, you know, the owner saying, hey, who does your tanks? And then he calls his buddy up and says, hey, when this guy calls you, tell him my tanks are good. So you just need to find ways of finding back channels into figuring out what's going on. And there is a third one here, but when I think of it, I'll pipe in again.
That's some serious gems right there. Thank you. E, did you have any input on any of those?
No, just
Yeah.
exactly legal. Yeah, you have to consult attorney, and it's going to be so area specific.
Totally.
You must check before you consider, or before you put any bill back in your pro forma. It may never happen. So
And the
Yeah,
last, I remember the last one, which was when you're checking with what the owner gives you. So you're getting the bills from the owner, you're getting the things from the owner, and then you're going to the city or wherever, and you're comparing the two to see if they're lying. The one mistake I made in my first park was I got the water bills from the owner, and I went to the city and I've got the water bills, and they both matched up. And what I didn't know is the city was so small they didn't have a water meter guy go out. They were all self-reported. And in this particular park, the owner had run a jumper on the main. It was a main going servicing the park. So half the water was going into the park and half the water was going around the meter. So in the end, I was losing 150,000 gallons of water a month. When I only thought I was using 50,000 gallons. So if you're in a small town, I would just say make sure that you know, in that particular case, that they actually have a water meter reader.
that's a great point. And that was on public utilities. That wasn't even on private. That's good. Thank you. All right, what other questions you guys got? This is good stuff. Thanks for the participation.
I actually had this question. I put it in the chat because is it legal for how do you even determine if EPA can force connection if your systems work properly? If you license the systems work properly, you know, how do you even know if this is legal? Or does it depend on
Meaning
how?
like you've got a license to operate the lagoon or the wastewater treatment
Yeah.
plant. And
They force you to connect, like force you.
yeah, I don't know, to be honest. You're saying, how do you figure out if that's going to happen? Or you're saying, how do you figure out if it's legal that they can do it? If trying to figure out if they can legally do it, you just get an attorney.
Yes.
I'd be getting an attorney involved very early. Barry, what's up? You got your hand up.
Yeah, I've had that happen here near where we live, where they passed laws from the St. John's Water Department, not department, what do they call that, the commission, and they give X amount of time where everybody, especially around the Wekiva River, that they had to do away with their septic systems, even though they were fine, but they know it's leaching the phosphorus, so they can come in and post that. How you would find, I would call the health department and say, and the health department is the one that controls septic systems, and they control anything with sewage, so you'd call them and find out, is there any restrictions, or have to change it, or am I going to be forced to hook it up to it? And they would know.
So my question is this. So, they're saying, okay, so we passed new laws and now it's illegal for you to keep your septics. It's illegal for you to have a lagoon and whatnot. Well, in this case, maybe it's just a kind of discussion or thoughts out loud, but how can they force a park owner, small business owner, to come out with all this money for connection and for capex,
They
right?
can't.
Is the low interest loan? There has to be some sort of thought behind it, Mario. No?
Katrina,
Yeah,
that would be like spot zoning, and they can't do that. But if they made the whole area, including other houses or facilities, and they have to comply to that, then yes. But if it was just a park, I'd get an attorney.
Yeah, the answer to your question is because it's government and they can screw you if they want to, regardless of the cost. And they do it all the time. So as soon as they pass the ordinance or the law, that's law. And it doesn't matter. That's what happens in business every day all around the country when politicians that know nothing about what they're doing and what they're voting on, vote on something, it affects businesses and it literally shuts them down, bankrupts them all the time in all different industries. So yeah, they can do it. Now, I think a follow-up question to that is, how do you protect yourself against that? Okay, let's say you do buy the wastewater treatment plant property. Lagoon's pretty sketch, so you want to make sure you've got an exit plan on that, because chances are you're probably going to get forced out of that at some point. But even on a wastewater treatment plant or a septic system, how do you? Go to the media, yeah. But how do you protect yourself? Well, number one, know the life remaining on the system. Number two, amortize the life on that system. Number three, reserve for that system at a little bit faster pace than what you think it's going to take. And then make sure that you've got a good credit facility or good access to debt if you need to quickly go borrow the difference to go and connect in an urgent matter. But you should really be budgeting. Your CapEx reserve is not $50, $50 or $100 a lot. When you've got private utilities, it's much higher. So you need to be reserving. Barry?
Yeah, you could also put something in your contract, only if you were going to have some owner financing, a percentage of it, where you could say, hey, if the sewage treatment plant fails within, it could be a sliding scale, if it fails within the first year, X amount of credit, and each year thereafter being narrowed down. I did that with houses where if they couldn't be replaced, I had the owner agree that he would have to lower my mortgage by $20,000 a lot. So you could negotiate something only if you have leeway against them, leverage. But where you have a mortgage that you're supposed to be paying them, then you can negotiate it.
I like the creativity, Barry. That's awesome. Yep. You got private debt along with private utilities. You got some leverage that you can use in that situation, and it's good to negotiate that up front. Hey guys, we're running out of time. We got about time for one more question, and then I got probably a couple announcements, and we'll bounce out.
Okay, I have a quick question.
Yes.
A little off, but as far as like the homes, when we're evaluating and you have a park that's mostly leased to own, how would we evaluate the expenses and things like that?
Great question. So how do you evaluate, and not a short answer on this one, but you saved the longest for last. All right. So if you've got a rent to own type community where you've got a lot of park owned homes, okay, you're going to want to figure lot rent and that expense ratio there. Okay. And you're going to want to figure the extra home rent and a much higher expense ratio on that. Now, let me be clear. You're not, for valuation purposes, you're not valuing the property with the home rent or the rent to own. So just to clarify, were you asking me how do you value the property, or were you saying how do you figure out your expense ratio?
A little bit of both. I didn't know if we just evaluate it as if it were just a rental home or not.
Yeah. If it's a rent to own, you're going to want to figure lot rent. Okay, you're going to pretend like you're collecting lot rent only on that home, and then you're going to figure shell value at max shell value, or call it blowout value, what you can sell that thing for cash quickly to determine the value of the home. Now, in an expense ratio, just for operational purposes, you're going to want to look at a 50% probably a 50 or more % expense ratio on a, because it's a rental home. Okay. And now you can be aggressive and you can say, well, the tenant, is technically responsible for maintaining the home, yada, yada. Chances are you're still going to get stuck fixing it. And chances are they'll never actually own that home. You'll probably get that home back. And there's going to be maintenance and repair costs on those that they didn't do because they deferred the maintenance. So it's a double question. For operational purposes, you're going to figure 50% on those homes at least on the expenses. And for valuing the property, you're going to pretend like they're all just collecting lot rent. And then if you have to add something for the homes, it's just shell value, blowout value. What can you sell it for quickly? Cash.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Okay.
Thanks.
Happy to help. All right, guys, that is it. E, do you have any final announcements other than next week? We do have, we got 2 more, worst mistakes you can make in the mobile home park world? Okay.
Yes.
and then also, hey, one other thing, E, and if you can tell us what those 2 are going to be, if you know, but secondly, guys, mastermind members, we're going to see you guys tomorrow night. We got our awesome call tomorrow for the mastermind members. So we'll be connecting with you guys tomorrow. I'm looking forward to seeing you. E, do you know what the topics are next week?
Yeah. And Joseph, you have to come next week because he had also a very quick question. How much does it cost to switch from private to public?
Oh, easy question, right? Just know it's like hundreds of thousands, if not more. Like connecting in your multiple 6 figures on that.
Yeah.
It's a depends. Which depends. Okay.
Exactly. So it's multi-layer question, but Joseph, you stick with us long enough, you will get the answers because this is you kind of getting information and layering your knowledge and experience one on top of the other. So because it so depends on so many different criteria here, but as you know more, you will be able to figure that out.
He's going to be the first one to raise his hand next week.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, tomorrow, maybe not yet tomorrow, but next week. So we're going to celebrate Halloween. So next week, we're going to be talking about our next 2 worst mistakes, but at the same time, let's do it tribe way. So the best costume wins a little something from the tribe, some cool present.
We got presents here.
Yes. So get creative, not that virtual stuff, do something real here. And so 2 next mistakes that we're going to be covering, and I have the honor of covering those, is going to be number 1 is buying park in floodplain. That's 1. And then number 2, not adjusting your pro forma for the new tax rates. So very exciting. Okay, floodplain, yeah, and tax rates. So this is all coming up next week. So be here with us. Dress up, how we do it. And in addition to learning, you may win a cool prize from the tribe. So, and check out, I will post either tomorrow or the day after, I will post in the chat the booklet that we put together with those 12 worst mistakes. We'll post it in the group so you can grab it and you can reference as we go along. You can also read in your free time. So if you want to revisit something.
One other thing, shoot, I forgot what that one was. I had it on the tip of my tongue. So next week, yes, make sure you're here. There's something. Oh, hey, if you guys haven't been to the mhptribe.com website, who on here is not actually logged in on the mhptribe.com website? Okay, cool. So there's a bunch of you. If you haven't already, make sure you go to mhptribe.com and set up a user account. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. And you can actually go back and watch episodes. So like some of the questions that are getting asked, those have been answered in previous, but also you get access to a ton of other resources that E will reference regularly. So make sure that you're in there. Okay. So
Absolutely.
have an awesome week. Crush it. Go buy a
Yes.
park. Go max out that NOI. We'll see you next Monday.
Very good. Thank you, guys.
Have a good one, everybody.